What is going on, everybody? It is that EFIN morning after show. It's after the divisional round of playoffs. We know who is going to be playing for a shot at the Super Bowl for the conference titles. A lot of stuff to talk about, stats, who's going to win this weekend, what we learned about these games. There's nothing to do but just get into it. Here we go. It's that EFIN morning show. And we add to the stage, as always, Mr. Adam Hulse. Adam, we had a great week of football. And, whoops, sorry about that. And look, we learned a lot about the teams. We're going to learn a lot more as the show goes on. But we had a great weekend of football. And honestly, I'm really not surprised just because of what we saw. I'm not surprised on how it turned out. I don't think there's a lot of surprises, even though we didn't predict it this way. Ultimately, I don't think surprises are there. But what did you think of this weekend?
No, I don't think it's super surprising either, especially the way that this season played itself out. And, sure, we might have learned some things about some of these teams, but for the most part, it kind of feels like, the more things change, the more they stay the same, right? And, in particular, with that Bills matchup, we got the Niners in the conference championship again. Allen still can't beat Mahomes in the playoff game. Lamar Jackson, that was his best playoff game of his career by far, and one he needed. We talked about that a lot last week, that his playoff numbers before this game, absolutely abysmal. Not just kind of bad,
not good,
atrocious. And he came out and played excellent, flawless, fantastic, superstar type of game. So that's good for him kind of flipping that narrative. But I said it last week too. There was no way that all four home favorites were going to win. It never happens. It never happens that all four home favorites win in the divisional rounds. Now, the Chiefs beating the Bills, you can debate whether or not that's really an upset, but that's the road team that got it done.
Yeah, no, they did. And look, fourth and flex, Bandy, he's a huge Tampa Bay fan. He's happy for the Lions. I mean, the Lions, that's a big win for that city. But damn it, he says for his Tampa, his Bucks. The Bucks played well
until the end of that game. The Bucks gave him a run for their money. Baker played pretty well, but then unfortunately, in kind of a classic Baker move, he throws that pick at the end of the game that kind of ends it. But if he could have done something with that drive, that could have got real exciting.
Look, and that's not to take anything away from Baker. I mean, the guy had an amazing season. The guy, far exceeded the expectations, especially from this commentator right here. But I really didn't expect that.
To get a Daniel Jones type of contract this offseason, right?
What else are you going to do?
Right. I mean, he's been better in his career than Daniel Jones. He's had his ups and downs. And now in a contract type of year, he just had arguably the best season of his career and advanced in the playoffs.
Absolutely.
Look, he's not going to be one of those 50 million plus type quarterbacks among the highest paid, but he'll get that second tier quarterback contract, I believe, similar to a Daniel Jones last year.
I can totally see that you saw Bandy being proud, and here it is. That's my quarterback. I can see it. I want to see the video, Bandy, on fourth and flex. Go check those guys out. I want to see it. That's my quarterback. But yeah, far exceeded expectations. Let me tell you something real quick as we start off the show. I mean, you already know this, Adam, but we have some stats for you. We throw out the stats. I got some stats from this weekend that are just going to blow your mind. And I didn't even get to finish them all. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't get to finish all the stats, but some of the ones stick around. You're gonna be glad you did. That said, let's look. There's how we did on the season. We told you guys already know. We predicted the entire season game by game, and this is how we did. Home teams came out 159. To 113. I actually took our record down, so I lied. It's not how we did, but we did really well. We did upper 60%, and we are proud of that. That said, There's how we did. Adam edged me by 2. So when we get into the playoff predictions, wild card weekend, there's your numbers for wild card weekend. Here's your numbers for the divisional round. All right. Home teams almost always has the advantage. Go back and look through the years. It's pretty, like you said, home teams always have the advantage, but they never seem to clean out. But these are the numbers that I'm looking at here are these touchdowns. All right. We had half as many teams playing again. Well, not half as many. It was 2/3. But while the passing touchdowns took a hit, the rushing touchdowns did not. The defense special teams tells them to do the field goals really did not take a hit. And of course, the field goal that matters.
The game on the line, he will. 44 yards, pass. No, he doesn't make it. Wide right. Wow. The 2 most dreaded words in Buffalo.
When you saw that happen, you and I are old enough. Thank you, Bandy. Appreciate that. And that's what he wants to see. 2 years, $54 million for Baker.
I think you might get a little more than that, but that's probably somewhere in the range.
Yeah, I mean,
that's maybe more like 35 a year, but yeah, something like that.
That does seem to be what they're going for, roughly to keep your guys. What did you think when you saw that kick? You're old enough to remember, just like me.
I mean, look, of course, the whole wide right thing, and Nance pointed it out, the 2 most dreaded words in Buffalo, and, most of us do know what that means with, the wide right kick that started the whole, 4 Super Bowl losses in a row for the Bills in the 90s. But honestly, when I was watching the ending of that game, when Josh Allen took those 2 deep shots instead of going for the first down, the thing that was going through my head was whether he makes this field goal or not, the Bills aren't going to win this game because there's too much time on the clock. The Bills defense did not stop Mahomes and that offense once all game. I believe the Chiefs only punted 1 time, and it was in the 4th quarter. Yeah, 1 punt, and it was in the 4th quarter. The only other drive that they didn't score was when they took a knee to end the first half. Yeah. So what would make me think that all of a sudden the Bills defense is going to stop the Chiefs from at least getting into field goal range? And look, whether Butker makes it or not, who knows? But he's been pretty clutch in those situations for the Chiefs in those conditions. So I just felt like make it or miss it. The Bills left them too much time. I didn't understand those 2 shots into the end zone instead of trying to pick up another first down or 2, work some clock, and then go for the end zone after, you work the clock or make the Chiefs use the timeouts. And if you don't get into the end zone, then at least you're kicking the field goal with less time on the clock. We all saw Diggs wide open on that crossing route that would have easily been a first down that Allen instead took the shot to the end zone. I understand why you want the touchdown, of course. You don't want to tie the game. You want to take the lead, and then you want to force Mahomes to have to go get a touchdown. But I think that the clock was an important factor in that too. And again, Diggs was wide open. Take the first down, extend the drive, keep it going. So that was my thoughts as I was watching the kick: is make it or miss it. I don't think the Bills are going to win this game anyway.
No, I think everybody was thinking that. I was definitely thinking that. I'm sitting there telling the wife, there's too much time on the clock. Even if they score, there's too much time. You can't leave Mahomes with that much time. And you saw the desperation. The first half, you saw the Bills. You saw the swagger. The Bills were going to win that game. The Bills knew that they were going to win that game, and it was over. They were finally going to get that monkey off their back, and they come out in the second half. Stuff started to even out a little bit, just like the Chiefs do, saying Superbowl, if you'll remember. And the Chiefs started to kind of slowly take over that game. And I really think, and I know I'm not the only one to think this, going for it on that 4th down made 0 sense to me, and that was the game changer. That's where they lost the game, in my opinion. Because that's where they lost that mojo. That's where they lost that absolute feeling that they were going to win. And they tried to get it back because they immediately got the ball back. They were able to salvage that mistake, but it was just a bad spot on the field to do. It was a bad time to do it. There was no reason to do it. And I know that's the strategy, is that nobody's thinking we're going to do this right here. And so it's going to work, but it just, to me, it wasn't worth the risk being where you were on the field. If they'd been on the other side of the 50, I think maybe you'd have a little more, but being on that side, and like I said, they salvaged it, but to me, that was really the spot where the Bills started to panic a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. That's when their desperation showed, and I do agree with a lot of what you said. That kind of was like the turning point of the game, at least mentally, probably, for the Bills. But the one thing that I disagree with is that I don't think it caught the Chiefs off guard. Like, in that spot of the game, like the beauty of a fake punt, when it works, is when you catch them off guard and nobody saw it coming. In that critical spot of that game, they're ready for everything. You know, like special teams is on alert at that point. Fakes are on alert at that point. I don't think that was the right time to catch them off guard with it because it looked like the Chiefs saw it coming. And even if they didn't, they were at least ready for it because fake punts don't work in crucial spots like that in games. They work when it just seems like a routine punting type of situation, not when it's really getting down to the nitty gritty.
And Bandy's right here. You know, Allen needs to go for the check down. He does go for that home run ball. He's lived on it, and it's worked up until this point, honestly. But you don't not pass to a. He was wide open. He was wide open. They had him twice, and especially after the first one, he should have went for it on the second one. He didn't need to go to that touchdown on the second one. But like to your point and what you said with Bandy, I mean, Kansas City only had 10 guys on the field, and they were still able to stop it. I guarantee you, I'm not an NFL coach. I'm not a special teams coach. I've never coached special teams, anything about it. But I promise you, in the second half of a close game, in any close game, when the punt team goes out on the field, the special teams coach is screaming, I don't care what happens, don't let them fake it. Like, get the kick, get the coverage. That's task 2. That's task 2 to get the run back. Task 1, don't let them fake it. And, you know, you have to know that from the Bill side of the ball, too. The Bill side has to say, I wonder, I don't know, I would, you'll never find out, but I wonder what, if all the coaches were on board with that. I wonder if everybody was like, yeah, okay, let's try it. Or if that was a trust play, like, all right, man, I don't think it's a good idea, but I trust you, so do what you got to do.
You know, Romo pointed out something interesting, too, during the broadcast, which, you know, he doesn't know whether or not this is the case, he said, but it is possible that their special teams package, if they only count 10 defenders, that's like, you know, a quick check. Like, that's like a hot audible that they just went with because that's what they practice. If there's 10 men on the field on the defense, we snap it and we run it.
That's a great point. I mean?
And like, yeah,
that is a great point.
So like, that's possible. That's not necessarily what happened. That's just a theory. There could be a theory, too, that McDermott called it. There could be a theory that...
There's a million theories, and we'll never know.
Called it on its own. Like, nobody's going to really know exactly why they ran that play. And also, look, let's just say, too, like, wasn't it, like, a little bit strange, too, that... Or, like, forced in a way that play was given to Damar Hamlin also?
Yeah, that was weird. That was weird.
Know, like
the guy's not even a defensive starter.
They were like trying for some kind of storybook ending type of thing.
I don't know.
Like
we're gonna get into the script writers
and gets the first down and leads the Bills to victory. Like I don't know. Let's just say this: that this does not work in the script writers' favor. Because if the script writers were in charge of this game, Damar Hamlin would have got that first down.
Absolutely. Maybe that's where it got messed up. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. We're going to talk about that. I told you we got some amazing stats coming up. Here we go. Let's start getting into those a little bit as well. The divisional round, home teams went 3-1. We looked at that already. Winning teams outscored losing teams 116-78. Not nearly the blowout that we had last week, but still significant. Every remaining team that is left right now won their division. I thought that was interesting. We haven't seen that in a little while. You talk about how the home teams never make it all the way through. This is another area. Usually there's some kind of wild card, but all these guys won their division. And I think that's an interesting thing to note. Only 1s and 3s survived. You talked about last week how the 2s are there's always a 2. This is the first time a number 2 has not advanced since at least 2015. I got tired of going back at that point. I was going back, and I'm like, you know what? 2015, that's 10 years. We'll start there. but at least since 2015, a number 2 has made it. Not this year for the first time. And you did bring that up last week. Only North and West teams survived to the conference round, which is a little odd. But what isn't odd is a West team has made every Super Bowl since 2018. Whether it's AFC West or NFC West, a West team has made the Super Bowl every time since 2018. All right. And they have always been, obviously, since they made the Super Bowl, in the conference championships. We know the Kansas City run goes back, like 6 years at this point. And San Francisco and Kansas City. Here's the other thing. In all these conference games going back the 6+ years, it's always been Kansas City, San Francisco, and there's the 1 year with the Rams. All West teams, they are the West representatives all the way for all those years. They have been there. I thought that was kind of interesting too, that when you talk about how West teams have always survived, it's always been Kansas City and or San Francisco and the Rams in the West. So there you go. That's how the division played out. What do you think about that before we get into that? I thought these were kind of interesting. I didn't really realize the West thing, but yeah, there it is.
Well, yeah, I mean, the West thing, a lot of that has to do with the Chiefs, of course, with the crazy streak that they're on. But what I didn't realize is, just the interesting one to me is that just the North and the West survived this year. I didn't put that one together in my head for whatever reason. For me, the NFC North being there is a little surprising. I was down on the NFC North in general coming into this season. I wasn't a believer in the Lions like a lot of people are. I am now. I mean, they proved me wrong. I'll admit I was completely wrong about the Lions coming into this season, of course. The non-surprising ones, the Chiefs and the Niners being there isn't surprising anybody. And the AFC North, we've talked a lot about them preseason, during the season, how good that division was. So they definitely deserve a representative.
Absolutely. And, you talk about how Kansas City and San Francisco isn't a surprise. I think Kansas City is not a surprise based off the preseason predictions, right? But what a lot of people are talking about right now when you watch all the sports shows and read the articles and stuff is that how down everybody was on Kansas City and Baltimore too. I mean, let's not just stick. Let's get everybody involved in the conversation. Nobody expected Baltimore to be here. And as the season progressed, not a lot of people were sure that Kansas City was going to be here. With the way they were playing, the wide receiver room, the offense just wasn't clicking. And honestly, we're going to see they hadn't really turned it on until this Buffalo game. They turned it on when they needed to, and you'll find out what that means in just the next couple few minutes here as we get down these stats. Because like I said, these stats get crazy. But how do you feel about that and the fact that all the teams that are here, with the exception of maybe San Francisco, there was at least a point, if not the entire season, where they weren't really expected to be here? Or wasn't sure.
I know a lot of people are kind of down on the Chiefs this year. I've never been down on the Chiefs. I know that their offense isn't as dominant this season as it usually has been in years past. But I've kind of said this all season about the Chiefs. This is by far the best defense that Patrick Mahomes has ever had. For how many weeks have I even been saying on this show, just wait until Mahomes gets to the playoffs and that offense is going to look different than it did the rest of the year. I think right now the Chiefs are kind of feeding off of the fact that everybody says that they're not so good this year, that they're not as good as they usually are, and that this is a down year for the Chiefs. You don't think Mahomes hears all that noise? You don't think he hears all that? And you don't think that's going to motivate him a little bit this year to say, oh, really? You're going to doubt me? I'm the only quarterback in the league right now with multiple MVPs and multiple Super Bowl rings. The only one? And you're going to doubt what I can do this season? Okay.
I was looking for this quote from Chris Jones. That's what you see me looking down here, and I apologize for looking down for this. But I was reading an article about one of the stats with Kansas City coming up, and Chris Jones even acknowledged the fact that the defense has had to step up, but at no point did they ever doubt the offense. They've had full faith in the offense. They know what Mahomes can do. They knew that the offense would come around. They knew that they just had to hold it down for a while until that happened. And we're going to see how that happened in Buffalo in just a minute. But to your point, even Jones acknowledges this. What's that?
Like, isn't it very like Patriot-like? All those great dynastic years for the Patriots, their offenses were usually not great. Like they had some years where the offenses caught fire, but especially early in the Brady days, it was all about great defense and excellent quarterback play. And like that's what the Chiefs have right now, and that can take you a long way.
We have Bandy bring. I'm so sick of KC, and you brought up the Patriots. That's exactly what people were saying. 10 years ago when it was the Patriots. I'm so sick of the Patriots. The Patriots are always there. Yeah. Now we got the Kansas City trade.
Well, everybody. Mahomes ain't going anywhere for a long time. He's not even 30 years old yet, and most quarterbacks get better in their 30s than they were in their 20s. So, I mean, settle in, guys. The Chiefs are going to be here for a long time.
They talked about this, and when we get to the whole the pulse with Hulse, I kind of have something that's going to lead into this with Mahomes and some of these other things. So stick around for the pulse with Hulse. I asked 3 questions to Adam. He has no idea what they are, and we get his take throughout the NFL on these. My favorite part of the show. But Bandy asked, the Lions are legit, but do we think they can beat the 49ers? We are going to get into our picks and stuff. But Bandy, because you asked it right now, I want to hit it right now. We don't have to get in the whole thing, Adam, but it brings up a question. Again, stick around for the stats, everybody, because I got stats between these two teams that are going to I'm telling you, look, I'm telling you, the stats are going to blow your mind when you see this, but the Lions are legit. Do we think that they can beat the 49ers? Just before we get too deep into it, on the surface, what do you think, Adam? Because this is a question.
Look, I would like their chances a lot more if the game was being played in Detroit. That crowd has been electric for their playoff team so far. But of course Detroit has a chance to beat San Francisco. Detroit.
That's why they played the game.
Yeah. And look, they're playing great football right now. Purdy has not looked so good lately. Did not look good in their win. I mean, the Niners got the job done, but Purdy didn't look great. He's going to be under some pressure. And look, let's not forget either, the Niners have been great for a lot of years in a row now too, but when it comes down to it, they have not gotten it done either. You can make all the excuses you want for why it happened and the Jimmy Garoppolo overthrow and the Brock Purdy injury last year. Whatever the reason may be, the Niners have gotten far in every postseason and then come up a little bit short as that Super Bowl keeps evading them as well. So, yeah, the Lions can do it.
Absolutely. We're going to see. Wait till you see these stats. I can't wait. Spagnuolo being head coach next year, that defense has been legit. That could be a real thing. And you're right, Adam Purdy hasn't looked amazing in the playoffs. Great point. But he hasn't looked bad either. And look, let's remember, I got some Purdy stats for you as well, obviously. But let's remember why Purdy is there.
Too, Debo may or may not play.
That's something we're going to be watching. But let's remember what Purdy is there for. What Purdy is even 100% why he's even in the role. Since the day he came in, he's been asked to do one thing, and that's enough. That's it. He's never been asked to be spectacular. He's never been asked to, exceed predecessors or become the next Tom Brady. He's been asked to do enough. And that's exactly what he has done. He's done enough to get them in this position. And so will he do enough to get them to the Super Bowl? We'll find out. Bandy, we love all the love. You're so full of love. I'm telling you, this guy, God dang, Bandy, 4th and Flex. You guys got to check him out. He is just one of the best, him and his boy Trey. When I watch what we do, I watch 4th and Flex. All right, so next slide, if you will. Kind of some about the players and some about the teams. It shouldn't just say players, but teams with the time of possession went 2-2. What I want you to think about when I run through these stats, everybody, is how there isn't a defining stat here. Normally we have defining stats, and maybe we'll have some later on in the show. We'll go over those in just a few minutes. I promise. It's coming up. We're not dragging it out today. But look for how there isn't a defining stat. I mean, we've got extremely equally matched playoffs conference round in this one. I'm not so sure we've had something so evenly matched in recent years, but we definitely do. Team with the top time of possession went 2-2. Teams with fewer turnovers went 1-2. Okay, so actually the team with the most turnovers actually won once. That was actually Kansas City. Teams with more total yards, 2-2. Didn't make that much of a difference. 300 plus QBs, Mayfield, only one. Unfortunately, they didn't win. Running backs at over 100, Aaron Jones, only one. They did not win. Double-digit targets, Collins went 5 for 10. They didn't win. CMC, he's a little bit different, 7 of 12. They did win. Evans, 8 of 12. Nobody caught the double-digit targets, but they got them. And these are CMC's there as a running back, all right? But 2 of those 3 guys didn't win. And wide receivers over 100, Mike Evans. Tampa Bay balled out. I mean, they balled out, but they didn't win. Bass's kick, this is just a fun one. Bass's kick was 44, Norwood's was 47. They both went right within 3 yards of each other, about 3 yards off the kick as well. But again, like I said, Adam, maybe I'm not seeing it, but where is the stat that gives somebody an edge here?
Well, this weekend it looked like you either had to play at home or you had to have Patrick Mahomes on your roster.
What I saw really when I broke all this down, and of course I got to see everything as I'm breaking down the stats, is I saw teams that you look at the double-digit targets. All right, there was only 3 guys that had double-digit targets. Only 2 of those teams won. And so what I really took away, that was the big one for me. What I really took away there is the fact that it's the teams that are spreading the ball around. It's the teams that are utilizing the entire team. And Mahomes even said that at the end of the game about it being the total team is what gets you through, having other players pick up, having other things. That to me was the thing, because when you look at the Baltimore-Houston game, nobody on Baltimore, no receiver on Baltimore's team, I think, had more than 6 targets. Lamar is spreading the ball around. When you talk about San Francisco, they've been doing that all year, which is why the Debo injury is so significant, with the exception of CMC. CMC does get a lot of ball, but he should. And you go around, you look at these teams. Detroit has 2 running backs. I think I read yesterday that it's the first time in NFL history that 2 running backs have had gone over 1,000 all-purpose yards in NFL history. And if you remember, Detroit did it last year. They utilized both backs with one of them going to New Orleans. That's kind of been a game plan of theirs is to really utilize the double-headed running back monster. But that said, it's the teams that are spreading the ball around, using all the talent, that seem to be having the most success this year.
Yeah, and that was like a trend we talked about a lot, like during our shows throughout the course of the season when we looked at fantasy numbers and all the changes in the top 10s and all the distribution and stuff like that, especially for running backs, like the days of the featured running back are kind of long in the past, minus Christian McCaffrey, who, should we even call him a running back at this point? Like, he's an offense. You know what I mean?
He kind of is, yeah, right?
He's a running back. I mean, I feel like calling him a running back at this point is almost doing him a disservice for all.
God forbid you ever let him catch a punt one day or something,
Right. Well, I mean, he did it at Stanford, right? When he was in college, he was their kicking punt returner too. So
that's
I mean, we've seen him throw passes this year.
They're just not going to let him. That's what I'm getting. They're not going to let him because they don't want to get hurt.
No way.
But God forbid they ever did.
That's not going to happen unless it's in like a Super Bowl situation and there's like an important punt coming up. It's possible that they could do something like that, like in the 4th quarter of the Super Bowl, maybe. But they're not going to risk that in general.
Probably not. But spread the ball around. That's a lesson here. And so I expect to see more of that, with the exception of CMC. Again, no hurt, no damage done there, obviously. But all the other teams spread the ball around. And that's what makes the conference games so interesting, is now we've got everybody doing the same thing and having about the same success doing it. And this is what I'm talking about when we talk about that. Oh, yes. And there's this. By the way, I'm sure a lot of you have seen this. The color schemes obviously go out well before the playoffs start, and they just happen to be predictions. of what's going to happen. I don't know. It still applies even going in this weekend. And look, they've got the San Francisco thing there, but that could just as easily be a Kansas City thing, and you know, blend the red with another color, blue, to get the purple. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can read into this, but San Francisco to Baltimore is going to be really crazy if this works out. Yeah.
Yeah, and look, let me just say also that Eagles one to me is a bit of a stretch. That
it kind of is
that they're using for the Eagles. That's more so the Dolphins, the Jaguars. That's that more, you know, that kind of shade. But hey, I mean, it fits the narrative. So let's just say any shade of green works for the Eagles, right?
100%. I love it. All right. I promised you guys stats. Oh, once I get past my little animation here. There we go. Now we can go forward. Okay. So we're going to start here. We're not going to get too into this. We're going to get into the stats, but we have to. We did great on the NFC side. Didn't quite do so well on the AFC side. We stood a chance. We gambled on the Texans, and we acknowledged that. We said the Texans could win, and that's why we picked them. They did not. And, of course, we saw what happened. Close game, great game. Buffalo just can't beat Kansas City. So, you know, all honesty, we want to stick that up there. But we are going to talk about the predictions. All right. Here we go. Detroit and San Francisco. This is, you guys, just wait. Just wait. Wait for the little graphic. All right. So let's talk about the location. We talk about the home teams and the visiting teams. We know home teams did better during the regular season. They typically do better in the playoffs. Right now, one visiting team has won in every round. Don't know if that's going to happen in this one. If it doesn't, it'll be 1 versus 1. That hasn't happened since 2017 when you had the Eagles and the Patriots battle it out. But location, 6-3 on the road. 5-3 at home. That's counting the playoffs, but that's for the season. Okay. Again, 2-2 in each location over the last 4. Point score per game, we got to do it the EFIN style. We're not just taking point score per game. We're taking some kind of legitimate stat here. 14 plus second half points per game since week 13. Detroit has gotten at least 14 points in the second half in every game since their bye week in week 13. San Francisco, 14 plus second half points a game since week 15. All right, not far behind. Both these teams scored up in the second half. Again, we're looking for something to put some other team ahead. Turnovers, 0 so far in the playoffs. And that's more interesting to me for the Detroit Lions, the fact that they have not turned the ball over yet in the playoffs, but there it is. So since the teams aren't giving us anything, let's see if we can get something from the players. Purdy and Goff over the season. Goff and Purdy, QB 6 and 7 respectively. 7 and 6 would be more appropriate there. Both of them had over 4,000 yards. You got QB 2 and 5 in yards. You got QB 4 and 3 in touchdowns. Very close. Points per game, 21 touchdowns since week 9. Not to be outdone, 22 touchdowns since week 9 for Brock Purdy. All right, turnovers, 12 on the season for Goff, 11 for Purdy. Adam, I need something, man. I need something to give somebody an edge. I mean, I'm getting down into the stats a little bit. You know, help me out here, bud.
I don't know, man. Like, this is like dead even when you look at this stuff, which is really interesting to me because, you know, like the perception is that Purdy's been, you know, borderline MVP. Earlier in the season, he was the MVP favorite. Nobody's talking about Goff in that same light. Like, you know, like Goff is more like the feel-good story, you know, where he came from and his resurgence and the Dan Campbell thing. But then, you know, you lay this out side by side and we're kind of looking at the same guy.
Yeah. I mean, and probably like the same expectations in a sense that when they were brought in to do enough, and they've exceeded those expectations a little bit. Right? Like, that's the point. Like, that's the demand from Dan Campbell. Protect the ball, do enough to help everybody win. We know what the receiver room has done for both these teams. And, you know, I know people want to bring up, I love this one, Bandy, Goff's Super Bowl experience gets the edge. I think that's a huge one. I think that is a huge one. Goff has been here before. I will say I don't know that Purdy cares. Purdy seems pretty cool and collected. He's not one of those guys. That's kind of if you want to talk about comparisons or differences between, like, say, an Allen and a Brock Purdy, you can see Allen get flustered. I don't know that you really see Purdy get flustered. And I'm sure he does, but I don't see it.
But if Purdy gets, like, I agree with you to a point, but if Purdy gets to the Super Bowl, he's either facing Patrick Mahomes, right, who is the guy of this generation already, or he's facing the Ravens, who absolutely slaughtered him earlier in this season. So either one he's facing, that's a mental hurdle that he probably hasn't had to deal with before. I'm not necessarily saying it will affect him, because I agree with you. He seems very cool, calm, and collected. But this will be a different situation than he's had to see before.
I think up until this point, the advantage that Purdy has had over every quarterback in the NFL for the most part is, and hear me out on this, is that he didn't have anything to lose, and obviously he had his job to lose, and the fact that that the critics have been just waiting for him to fail and stuff like that. Yes, but I mean, he came in as the last pick. He's the very last pick, and he's getting a shot, and he's going to ride this train as long as he can, and he hopes that he turns out to be one of the great ones. But at the end of the day, if he didn't turn out to be one of the great ones, that would have been personally hurt, but it would have been, okay, I was the last, you're the last pick in the NFL. You weren't supposed to be this good in the first place. You've already exceeded every win you get, you exceed the bar just even more, because he wasn't supposed to win anything. He was never supposed to play. He was the last pick in the NFL draft. He was never supposed to play, let alone, be one game away from the Super Bowl. So kudos to him.
I 100% agree with you. Yeah. Like, I 100% agree with you that kind of mindset does make a difference. There's a lot more pressure on a guy who gets taken with the first overall pick than the last overall pick. That's for sure. But in that same note, that runs out eventually.
I was going to say, that's over now.
That runs out, and Brock Purdy is going to be expected to win because he was among MVP, because of how good the team is around him. I think he still has that maybe for this year, depending how it ends. But
I think it's over.
Next year, there's much higher expectations on Brock Purdy than there have been these last 2 years.
Yeah, I think it's over. I think this game, I think it is now over. I think that you are now in with everybody else. The expectations are the same for you as everybody else at this point. I think that's done. I think that story is played out. I think he silenced the critics. And you can say what you want over the last couple games, whatever, but I mean, look at the stats. I mean, there they are right there. I mean, he's in there with Jared Goff. He's up there again. He's number 5. He's top 5 in yards. He's top 3 for touchdowns. 11 turnovers, which is right there with all the best, all the top guys are at that or higher. Mayfield, I think, is the lowest. Stroud only had 5, but Mayfield had 10. Mahomes had 14. Jackson had 7. He did keep his down, but Prescott had 9. Hurts had 15. Allen, of course, had 18. He's up there. He's in the same group as everybody else. I think that story's over, and he needs to. Now he's in there. But you're right. Up until this point, I think that was probably an advantage that he had. I don't think that's an advantage anymore. And so we'll see what he does with that pressure. With this game, how do you see this one coming out? Because, first let's answer the question. What's the difference? Where's the advantage? To me, it's CMC. And you can make the comparison when you got the Detroit backfield, two-headed monster again, both guys over 1,000. Detroit, second team in NFL history where they had to have 4 players with 10-plus touchdowns. That doesn't happen. They've got Laporta, of course, who's the next whoever's name you want to throw in there at tight end. They've got the tools, they've got the talent, they've got the numbers, they've got the stats, but it takes 2 people in Detroit to do what CMC can do by himself, and I think he is the reason that San Francisco has a slight edge in this one, and the home field advantage. I'm not sure. What do you think, Adam?
The interesting thing here is that the Lions' rushing defense is the best in the entire NFL. They completely shut down the run of every single opponent that they face off against. But, we touched on it before. CMC is not just a running back. He is an entire offense. To me, I think one of the biggest keys is really going to be Deebo Samuel's health. Like when you go back and look at the 49ers numbers, when Purdy, McCaffrey, and Deebo all play, they're basically unstoppable. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they're undefeated when all three of those players play, or they might have like one or two losses. But when those three are all playing, it's a different team. You take one of those out, if you don't have a Deebo, it changes everything about the 49ers offense. Deebo is that X factor. He's that you never know what he's going to do, where he's going to be, that you always have to account for. And if you take him out, it makes defense a little bit easier to play against this defense. McCaffrey's going to get his, you know what I mean? You can be okay with that. But knowing that, you're the Lions and you can shut down the run, I think that definitely can be a factor. And I think that if Jared Goff can play a good game, not turn the ball over, and I do think that the Lions are going to be able to run the ball a little bit on the 49ers. The 49ers rushing defense is good. And in that same token that the Lions shut down the run against everybody, they find ways to run the ball against everybody too. So if they can run the ball and Goff can take care of it and not turn it over, I do think that the Lions have a very legitimate chance to win this game, especially if Deebo Samuel doesn't play. All of that being said, though, I am still going to give the edge to the 49ers and Brock Purdy. If he can play the way he played for most of this season and earlier this season, he can absolutely destroy this Lions secondary. They've been giving up 300-yard passers to just about every quarterback in the NFL. They can't stop any passing game. I look for Kittle and Ayuk to have huge games, especially, again, if Deebo Samuel's out. Those are the guys I'd be keying in on in this game. So because of that secondary, I do think that the Niners are going to be able to capitalize, but this would not be a shocking upset to me if the Lions are able to grind it out in an ugly kind of win.
Absolutely. And look, just kind of to your point, the 49ers, they had league-leading 22 interceptions. They had 28 takeaways over the entire thing. They only allowed 6.4 yards per pass attempt. And that's definitely a part of Detroit's game, but also when you talk about that running back game that you talked about, being able to stop the run, they have 48 sacks on the year, and Detroit's numbers are impressive. We talk about Goff, he's number one in passer rating for the playoffs. He's top 5 for the season. The stats are all there, but at the end of the day, like you said, offense wins games, defense wins championships. That is always a mantra of mine. It's something that I have believed in since I was a little kid. And I do think, I agree with you, it is the defense that's going to decide this game, and I think that's edge 49ers. All right, let's get into the other game. If I can get the graphic to change here. Kansas City and Baltimore. So we talk about some of these. Got to get that in there. I think whoever makes the least amount of mistakes will win this game. Bandy talking about the Detroit and San Francisco game. Absolutely. I mean, both teams have 0 turnovers. Whoever changes that stat could definitely lose themselves a game for sure. Kansas City and Baltimore. I got to wait for it to play out. Okay, let's talk about some of the same stuff. There you go. 7-2 on the road, 7-3 at home. Pretty even there. And that is including this last win that Kansas City has, obviously, throughout the season. 3-1, both of them 3-1 over their last 4 at the respective locations. So, edge no one here. Point score per game, got to do it the EFIN way. 14 plus second half point. Oh, I'm sorry. I had the other one in there. Sorry about that. We know that Kansas City, that's actually Kansas City's thing. Kansas City has 0 second half points in the last 3 regular season games. They finally got over that hump and scored 17. We had some technical difficulties on these last 2 slides. I thought this one came out. It did not. And Kansas City has the 1 turnover. So I'm sorry about the stats being on the opposite side. I don't want to confuse anybody, so I'm going to take those down. But that those are the stats. There's not a big, to me, the big stat that stands out, Kansas City did finally overcome the, the second half hump, 3 games without a second half score, but it's still got to be a concern. Yes, they finally got that road win, but Kansas City hadn't scored a second half point until they got into the Buffalo game. They're going to have to be able to score second half points because the Baltimore stat was that they have scored 14 or more points in every game since their bye week, with the exception of one where they only scored 10. So they've scored 10 or more points, but honestly, they've scored 2 or more touchdowns in every single game at home since the bye week. 5 of the last 6 is what it was. And you're not going to be able to have a lead going into the second half, Kansas City, and think you're going to win. And Kansas City's going to have to be ready for the second half because that's when Baltimore throughout the season has really turned it on.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do with Baltimore's defense, which is the best defense in the NFL. That defense is absolutely ridiculous how good that defense is. Like, who would have thought before this season that we get a Ravens versus Chiefs AFC Conference Championship game, and the two defenses are really the story of it. We're getting Lamar versus Mahomes, but realistically, when you look at these teams' success all year long, of course, you need the quarterback to really make it happen, but their success has been dependent on their defense, both of these teams.
Absolutely. The thing that is amazing, so Lamar Jackson's QB4, Patrick Mahomes is QB8. Patrick Mahomes has more yards. Patrick Mahomes has more touchdowns. Patrick Mahomes also has more interceptions. And Lamar obviously has more rushing yards and more rushing touchdowns. But honestly, again, we're kind of evenly matched. Both can run. Both have a running back room that responds when called upon. They both have a receiver that they can count on, Rashee Rice versus Zay Flowers, that they trust and they know they can get the ball to. They both have. We're going to see the 2 best tight ends, over the last few years in football in this one, with Kelsey and Andrews coming back. And look, promise you, Baltimore uses Andrews and Likely. Likely has been killing it in that role as well. This is a scheme thing as much as a player thing. And I'm not saying you can plug any tight end in there. What I'm saying is they have great tight ends and they know how to use them. So when you look at the strengths that these offenses have, again, it's pretty evenly matched. We're going to see a lot of the same stuff. And you talk about the defense. I always say defense wins championships. Can Baltimore stop Mahomes? Can Kansas City stop Lamar? Because that's really, to me, going to be the X factor for this game. I don't know. What say you, Adam?
Yeah, and like a big X factor for me when it comes to like those matchups that you're talking about is, can Kansas City stop the rushing game of the Ravens? Because as good as Lamar is, and like you said with the tight ends and with Zay Flowers, that offense starts with the ground game. It starts with being able to run with the running back so the defense has to respect it. That opens up the passing lanes for Lamar. It opens up the scrambling for Lamar. They are great in play action and things like that. So Chris Jones in the middle of that defense and that defensive line for the Chiefs, stopping the rushing game of the Ravens might be the key to them winning this game.
It's going to be interesting to see. What do you guys think at home? Give us your thoughts. See you guys out there. Who's going to win and why? This is the general consensus, just to kind of recap on this show. The Detroit-San Francisco game is ridiculously evenly matched. Let me bring up that slide again real quick, just so everybody can see it. We talk about where they are at home, the second half points for the season. We talk about the numbers here. Way more evenly matched than I think people realize. So defense is going to be the one that we think is going to be the deciding factor in this game. And then we just told you defense being able to stop it in the other one. I really think this is a defense wins championship kind of year. for this one. 1s and 3s. I really like the slide. I'm going to leave this one up for a second as we finish this up. Who do you got winning these next 2 games? Actually, no. Let's do this. That's the next question, but I want to do the Pulse with Hulse first. Pulse with Hulse. Let's run the graphic, and then I'll explain what that is. All right, Pulse with Hulse is something that we do here. There he is, Adam Hulse, and I'm going to ask Adam 3 questions about the state of the NFL right now, which of course is the playoffs. He has no idea what these questions are, and he's going to give us his best analysis that he can do on the fly, which is always absolutely amazing, to say the least. So, playoff analysis. Question 1, Adam, we talk about the defenses. We already kind of brought this up. Looking forward, without being specific about which ones they are, and what I mean by that is kind of give me an answer for all 4. Who has the edge to win the whole thing this year?
Defensively?
All the way around. Just which team really had, like, we talk about how evenly matched up all 4 of these teams are, and they are ridiculously evenly matched, even more so than it seems to be. When we get into the numbers and look below the surface, they're even more evenly matched than we thought. I guess it should be who has the edge, if anybody, right? If anybody has the edge, if anybody's kind of looking like a favorite right now to win the Super Bowl, who do you think it is and why?
I think it has to be the Chiefs, and it has to be Patrick Mahomes. He's the only quarterback who has had success in the Super Bowl before. He's the only one who's done it, right? And as I said earlier, this is by far the best defense that Patrick Mahomes has ever had in these 6 years in a row that he's been in the conference championship. All the other seasons, Mahomes has had to be spectacular for the Chiefs to have success because their defense wasn't great. Sometimes the supporting cast around them wasn't great. They were great because Patrick Mahomes was great. This year, he doesn't necessarily have to be spectacular. There's less pressure on Patrick Mahomes to be, this superstar who can just take over games on his own. And I think you're seeing it in the way he's playing, too. He's playing comfortably. He's playing conservatively. And then when they need a big play, he goes out there and gets it every single time. And with how close these matchups are, like we said, it looks like these games are going to come down to defensive battles and what quarterback can get it done with the game on the line down the ends. And if that's the case, all my money's on Patrick Mahomes.
I'm not mad at it because you're right. It is the X factor, and we've seen it before. We've seen it with the Patriots. We've seen it with Brady, where, maybe they weren't on a heater going in, but once you get to the next season, which is what this is, the playoffs, as we know, are an entirely new season, where it's one and done. That's when the great ones turn it on. Allen was great. Allen was fantastic until that last drive, honestly. And I mean, obviously he was one of the guys that was hot coming in, but the great ones step up and they play. Same thing here. It's just Mahomes is, like you said, done this before. All right. Question 2. Where did it go? I want to bring up this thing that Bandy from Fourth and Flex brought up. Spagnuolo will be a head coach next year. The defense will be legit. It brings up a great point. It happens every year. The teams that have success end up losing some coaches. I'm not going to ask you to predict where they're going to land or anything like that, but of these teams, who's losing what when this is all said and done?
Well, like Mike McDonald's for the Ravens has been a hot name that's been out there. Like, yeah, Spags has been awesome with this defense this year. Personally, I don't see Spags getting a head coaching job. Sure, he'll probably go on some interviews, but I don't know. Just like with all the young, popular, and big-name candidates that are out there right now for the open jobs, I just don't see a team, picking Spags over a lot of those other options that are out there, because this is a pretty loaded year with not just the amount of openings, but there's a lot of popular names out there that are, trending towards being head coaches. And, there's only X amount of jobs out there, for these positions. So again, like I know I've heard Mike McDonald's name a lot. Ben Johnson for the Lions is the name that's like, seems to be at the top of a lot of lists of teams that are looking at Ben Johnson. I've heard some rumors that it's basically a done deal that Ben Johnson is going to be the Commanders' next head coach. Unconfirmed rumors, but I have heard that. So, whether that's true or not, I guess we'll see. It obviously can't really have too much traction until the Lions are eliminated. So as far as they go, until that point, Ben Johnson's with the Lions. But yeah, like teams that do well, their coordinators always become popular. And, that could be why it seems like, the whole head coaching thing has stalled, right? Like all these teams are kind of not hiring guys. Well, a lot of that could be because they're waiting to do their interviewing process with the coordinators on the teams that are still remaining. Because obviously the teams still remaining, their coordinators did a good job to get them here.
Yeah, absolutely. And you always think it's easy for us on the outside to think I would rather stay in my, like, if I'm Spags, I'd rather stay with the Chiefs and see how many Super Bowls I can win. But at the end of the day, the NFL is still a business. These guys are still trying to get paychecks. These guys are trying to make a name for themselves. And so, hey,
money and legacy, man. Nobody really remembers the defensive coordinator of the Super Bowl champion, 10, 20 years from now, but you do remember the head coach. So it does make a difference.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the last question, this one's more of a opinion piece on this one. Who do you want to see in the Super Bowl and why? We know Mahomes has the edge, but
in the Super Bowl, I'm like everybody else now, where we've seen the 49ers,
everybody loves an underdog.
The Chiefs, I guess the most, maybe not necessarily most exciting matchup, but at least the most different matchup would be Ravens Lions, right? Like, it seems like unless you're a fan of the Chiefs, Ravens, or 49ers, you want the Lions to do it, right? I mean, how can you not love Dan Campbell at this point? The underdog story, one of the oldest franchises in the NFL, yet they still have never won a Super Bowl. This could be the year with, all the storylines with the Lions. They are a fun team to get behind. Again, like 49ers, though they haven't won one in a while, they've been there. The Chiefs obviously have won 2 recently. The Ravens, it's been like a little while, but they won 2 fair, at least this century, they've won 2. So yeah, I mean, it's got to be the Lions.
I actually didn't want Baltimore to get there. Originally, I wanted to see someone. I wanted to see Buffalo get there. I want to see Allen get there. But now that they're eliminated, I'm okay with.
Detroit would have been great, man. Buffalo, Detroit would have been great.
I'm good with either of the teams. I mean, the thing is, like, Jackson's going to win the MVP, and you don't see the MVP get the Super Bowl very often. I'm not sure what the exact numbers are. I can look that up, and I will during the week. But, usually the MVP makes a deep run but doesn't necessarily make the Super Bowl. Baltimore has played well. And honestly, there is something different in that locker room. We've seen all the clips. We've seen all the dancing and all that stuff. There's something different going on in that locker room. Lamar has really matured. And I love the fact that he's he's contradicted the usual get the money and run. Guys that get the bag don't typically perform. Jackson has stepped up and earned his paycheck, and I like to see that because it doesn't happen often. On the other side, I really want CMC to get a ring. He's one of the best to ever play the position in the entire game. He deserves a ring. That's why I'm kind of pulling for San Francisco. I love an underdog. I love the Detroit story. I love the whole thing. But for me, I got a little more love for CMC at this point, and I want him to get the ring. So that's where I sit. But that's the Pulse with Hulse. We do it every time. I love it. 3 questions off the cuff. And there you go. Before I end it, the Pulse with Hulse, it's not really the end of the series. We still have one more. But do you have anything else? You're a slave to my questions at this point. But do you have anything that you want to expand on? Because look, Adam Hulse, NFL writer at Sportskeeda. There's the stats and stuff. Go over to Sportskeeda, put / Adam Hulse in there. He cranks out 20, 25 articles a week about the NFL. and I love reading his stuff, super knowledgeable guy. Is there anything that just kind of like, you want to expand on or throw in there for this week?
Well, one thing I'm kind of keeping my eye on for this weekend, and in particular with the Chiefs, there are some rumblings out there that, especially if the Chiefs do win a Super Bowl this year, that Andy Reid could potentially retire. Like that is a thing that has been said out there. Also, there's the Kelsey thing going on as well. Jason Kelsey announced his retirement to his team. That story leaked, and then he denied that he's made a final decision. So it's like, is he retired? Not he's retired. I've heard a theory, too, of the potential of the Chiefs getting Jason Kelsey and pairing him with Travis Kelsey and playing one season together, and then they're going to retire next year. Again, these are all just theories. These are all just rumors. This is all just stuff that's out there.
Travis has blatantly said that he's not going to retire. Travis has said he's not retiring. That doesn't make it necessarily true. He could change his mind, but he has been very blatant saying, "I'm not done."
Said, and Jason said that he is retiring, and now maybe he's not retiring. You can never take people's word for it with this kind of stuff. You just kind of have to see how it plays out.
Money and situations change a lot of things. If Jason and Travis could play together, I think I agree. I think Jason would come back for one season to play with his brother. I think that could happen.
Yeah, like if that can happen, I think that would happen. Will it happen? Who knows? For me, the Andy Reid thing is what I'm really watching the most, because I have been hearing those rumblings for a few weeks now that Andy Reid is getting close to that point. And if he wins another one this year, that could be it. I still find it hard to believe. Now,
do you retire if you win? I don't know why you retire if you win. Like, you got to come back. If you win 2 in a row, I can see that. So maybe that's the thing. Elway did it. If you got 2 in a row, do you really need to come back for a third one? Like, I got 2 in a row. My legacy's set and all that. So maybe that's the difference. Is you don't retire after winning 1. You retire after winning 2 in a row. So I can see that.
Look, sure. I mean, his legacy's already set, though.
It's been set.
It's not 2 in a row. If he retired, like, if the Chiefs lose to the Ravens and Andy retires, he's still a Hall of Famer. So in his head, it's like, we don't know what his goals are. He's a multiple-time Super Bowl winner. In his head, he might be like, look, I'm good. I did everything I need to do. All my goals are already accomplished at this point. Like, I'm good, regardless of the fact that, maybe he doesn't have a Bill Belichick mindset of, like, I want to win 10 Super Bowl rings. Maybe to him, like, 1 or 2 was enough. Like, we don't know, like, what that mindset is. So it seems crazy to me that you'd have Mahomes in the prime of his career and you'd retire, because it's just like, if I'm a head coach and I have Mahomes in the state that he's in right now, I'm riding it for as long as I can, because I believe he's going to bring me a whole bunch more rings. But who knows if he really cares about that.
Indeed. I mean, he seems like a guy that did. But now that he's got, like, I think he's checked the box that he want to check. I really do. I agree with you on that. Like, everything else is bonus material at this point. He's got the Hall of Fame locked up. He's got his Super Bowl rings. He's going to go down as one of the greatest coaches in NFL history. And
his narrative was a great coach that can't win the big one. And now that he's gotten multiple with the Chiefs, that narrative's gone. Yep. His narrative now is one of the greatest coaches ever. That's how people talk about Andy Reid now. You have to remember, before he won these with Mahomes, the narrative on Andy Reid was, he's the guy that'll get you there, but he's not going to win it all. Like, he'll always get close, but never quite get it done. He's completely quieted and all that, and people almost forget about that at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Apologize for that. Thought I muted my mic. No, I'm with you. Adam Hulse, NFL writer at Sportskeeda, joins us every week on that FM Morning After Show. That's the Pulse with Hulse. We'll do it again next week. We'll do it again after the Super Bowl as we wrap up the season. 2 more shows to go. Keep coming back for more. We got one more thing we got to do, Adam. Here it is. We got to decide these games. We got to figure out who's going to the show. We've already kind of alluded to it, but hey, you know what? Everybody wasn't here for that. So it's time to lock in our final answers. Maybe you changed your mind over a couple things. Maybe some of these stats rang something in your head. It's not about the wants. It's not about the people that you like. No friends here. Who's going to the game, Adam?
I would love to see the Detroit Lions get there, and if they were playing at home, it is a pick that I would make. But in San Francisco, the way the 49ers have been all year and the deficiencies in the Lions secondary, I have to go with the 49ers to get there. And then on the other side, look, I already alluded to it. The Chiefs defense, the Ravens defense have both been excellent. Now, the Ravens defense, in my opinion, is better than the Chiefs defense, but the Chiefs defense is good enough to hang with them. I think this is going to be a tight game to the end. I think it's going to be a low scoring game to the end. And in that kind of one score situation with the game on the line in the fourth quarter, I'm going to favor Mahomes over Lamar Jackson any day. So for me, we are going to see a Chiefs 49ers rematch in the Super Bowl.
There you go. For me, I think Detroit can absolutely win this game. San Francisco is vulnerable in the middle of the field. Detroit can play there really well. They're vulnerable to the slot position, those crossing routes. And we've seen, Purdy not be at his absolute best. They may be without Debo, and I think that's going to be a big thing as well, where Debo's at. I think Debo plays, but how much does he play? How healthy is he? I think that makes a difference, obviously. CMC, of course, is the X factor here, not to mention the coach. I mean, the guy knows how to win games, clearly knows how to use his players. I think Purdy's going to feel a little more pressure. Does he step up? Schemes, all that. I think this is going to be closer than people think this is going to be. I think Detroit can absolutely win this game. I just don't think they do. I think maybe it's a last-second field goal. Maybe it's a game-winning drive that's stifled at the end. I don't know how this one's going to come out, other than I think San Francisco is going to win this one. So I do think San Francisco is going to the show. Baltimore and KC, I am not quite as definitive on. I can see either team winning this game. It's absolutely going to come down to the defense versus the quarterbacks. Both these guys are mobile. Both these guys can run. Both these guys are game changers. They talk about the game. I saw an article that was on one side is game manager and on the other side versus game changers. And that's honestly how I see it for the AFC. Who's going to, change the game? It's so hard. I think Baltimore is the better team, honestly. I do think Baltimore is a better team. They're playing at home. I've seen a lot of narrative about how Baltimore is absolutely one of the toughest places to play, and they don't get enough credit. Patty Mack was talking yesterday. When you play there, these are blue-collar fans, and they talk mad crap the entire game. But he said the difference is if your team goes down, they start talking crap to your own, about your own team. I paid $500 for these seats. What are you doing? Why aren't we winning? So that the crowd can turn on you, and that's going to be Kansas City's thing. Kansas City is going to have to smack them in the mouth early. They're going to have to get up, and they're going to have to remember that this game is going from the starting whistle to the very ending one, because Baltimore is great in the fourth quarter. In the second half, that's a hump that Kansas City has to overcome. Again, Kansas City has not scored any points the last 3 regular season games. They finally did against against Buffalo, but those last 3 regular season games, and they weren't against great teams, they did not score a single second half point. So yes, they're over the road win hurdle. I don't know that one game negates those 3 games. They are going to have to score second half points to beat Baltimore, and Baltimore is pretty good about shutting teams down in the second half. All that said, all the stats, all the stuff, I have to go. I want to pick Kansas City. I want to pick Patrick Mahomes. I'm going to take Baltimore. I'm going to do it. I made the decision literally just now as we're sitting here. I'm taking San Francisco, Baltimore. I'm taking 1 versus 1. Again, that has not happened since 2017 when it was Pats Eagles. There you go. I'm actually giving Kansas City the loss, and I think it's going to be the second half point thing. I think Baltimore is going to do enough. I think they're going to be able to shut them down. I think Mahomes is going to ball. I think Kelsey's going to ball. I think they are going to do everything that they can to win this game, but I think Baltimore has got something going on that Kansas City has been here before. They are used to it. Baltimore has something special. They have what Kansas City has had, and that makes them very dangerous because they are at home. I'm going to give Baltimore the win. I'm giving Baltimore the win. There it is. So I'm going San Francisco, Baltimore. Adam says San Francisco, Kansas City. Both of us can see it going anyway. What do you guys think? Let us know throughout the week. One thing I do know, and this is what I can guarantee, and you can't make a lot of guarantees in football, but this is what I will guarantee. We are going to have two absolutely barn burner of a game. These are going to be great games, start to finish. I don't see a blowout anywhere in here. I don't see a game that I'm going to turn off before that final whistle. Final thoughts, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you too. I think that these are two great matchups, two evenly matched teams. Two teams that, kind of have like the same type of strengths too, right? Like we talked about Kansas City, Baltimore, it's quarterbacks and defense. We talked about, San Francisco and Detroit, it's pass rush and running the ball. You know what I mean? Like very similar in their approach to how they win games. And my last thought on the Chiefs, their offense has not looked good all year. We talked about that a whole lot. They've looked pretty good in both of these two playoff games, right? Is it possible that like Mahomes and the Chiefs are just starting to get a little bit bored with the regular season? Like they know they're going to win their division. They know they're going to go to the playoffs. Like it's kind of like that. All right, let's get there, blah, blah, blah. And now that the games matter and what they play for, they turned it up a little bit. Travis Kelce has turned it up a little bit. He's been better in these playoff games than kind of he finished his season, just an interesting thought, you know what I mean? That just like maybe because they were better too earlier this year than they were the second half, that it might have just got to a point where they're like, all right, come on, let's get this regular season over with. This is boring. Like, let's get to the games that really matter. We know we're going to be there. They can sleepwalk and win that division at this point. They've turned it up. Let's see if they can turn it up again against the best defense in the NFL.
It is that EFIN Morning After Show. We will be here next Tuesday as well. We're here every Tuesday. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter if you like that. EFIN Show, at that EFIN Show at the top, and at Adam Hulse Sports are both available on Instagram if you prefer that as well. I know I do, but we do hit the Twitter machine up as well. But that's where you can find us. That's where you give your questions. This is where you'll find us on the Fantasy Sports Corporation Network and all the other places we're broadcasting to you, Facebook and whatnot. We will be here next week. And I leave you with this on the way out the door. Should Detroit and Kansas City make it to the Super Bowl, you're going to hear it, and you've probably already seen it. It's going to be Taylor Swift versus Eminem, and I'll take Eminem every time. Thanks for joining us, guys. That EFIN Morning After Show. We'll see you guys next week. Be safe.